Hey, what's going on YouTube, and welcome to another Season 7 League of Legends Champion Guide. Today, I'm going to be covering Taliyah, the STONEWEAVER.
Know the loom, be the stone.
So let's start this guide by looking at our pros and cons. So, first of all, Taliyah has a pretty strong lane phase. She has some really strong wave clear and poke damage from her Q ability, and some really solid combos. Since she is a mid laner that brings some really solid control to a team fight, she's of course a really solid team fighter. People aren't going to want to go anywhere near her Unraveled Earth, and she's going to be able to cut teams in half with her ultimate. This ultimate, of course, also gives her some really solid roams, which can get her into the lane really quickly and block their escape path. She's also very good at kiting because of her Q ability, and this gets even stronger when she gets her Rylai's Crystal Scepter. Of course, as I mentioned, she's also got some very, very high damage combos. Now, Taliyah is really weak against assassins and champions that can all-in you really quickly. This, of course, is due to her low mobility and the fact that she's pretty squishy as well. It's also going to take you a little bit of time to get used to your worked ground ability. This comes from your Q ability, and if you are in the work ground area, your Q is only going to shoot once. However, the mana cost is much lower, so it is good for last hitting, and of course you can still poke with it. Now, although Taliyah's ultimate is pretty solid, it's not a combat ultimate. That means in a straight 1v1 fight against something with a strong ultimate like Malzahar, you're going to have a disadvantage. Either way, Taliyah is a really fun to play and strong champion, and she's very, very solid at roaming. For your Masteries, you have two main options, but either way you'll want to go 18 Cunning and 12 Ferocity. For your Keystone Mastery, you'll want to select either Thunderlord's Decree or Stormator's Surge. Now, I personally like to go for Thunderlord's Decree, but Stormator's Surge is also fantastic. If you want to have a better kill threshold and have a little bit more damage into your burst combos, go for Thunderlord's Decree, but if you feel like you're really going to need some extra mobility because you are rather immobile, then go for Stormators. The rest of your Masteries are pretty self-explanatory because you are a very bursty mid laner and you just want to pick up as much damage as possible. For my runes, I like to stay very generic and get Magic Penetration Reds, Scaling Health Yellows, Magic Resist Blues, and Ability Power Quints. Now, if you do have multiple rune pages available, then you'll probably want to have one with Armor Yellows as well, just in case you are against an AD mid laner. You also have one other viable alternative, and that would be going for 6 Scaling Cooldown Reduction Blues if you did want to get 10% more CDR at level 18. Having capped CDR isn't the end-all be-all on Taliyah because she does have a really low cooldown Q, but if you want to hit that 40% cap, then you'll probably have to get some cooldown reduction blues. For me personally, I'll just have 30% CDR, that's fine for me, and stick with the Magic Resist Blues. For your Summoner spells, you have a lot of good options, but you'll want to definitely take Flash. You are a pretty immobile and squishy mid laner, and this can be used throughout the game to save your life, and you can also use it aggressively to help finish off kills. Now, if you're looking for some more mobility, then you could always take Ghost as well. It's going to be really solid for navigating in fights and keeping at a safe distance. Since I'm somebody that takes Thunderlord's Decree as a default, I usually take Ghost Flash because I really like the mobility that it does provide, since of course I don't have the Stormators. If you're instead looking for a very solid defensive option, you could go for either Barrier, Exhaust, or Heal. All are great defensive options, and they can help you survive all-ins. If you then want to be a little bit more offensive, then you could always go for Ignite as well. This will give you some nice added early kill pressure, and it can be the difference in actually getting an early kill in the lane phase. Your passive ability is Rock Surfing, and this is great for getting back to lane, getting to objectives, and ganking and roaming. Taliyah gains up to between 20 and 40 based on level % bonus movement speed by moving near terrain or structures, which builds up over 1 second and decays over 1 second upon moving out of range. Entering combat disables Rock Surfing and places it on a 5-second cooldown. This cooldown is continuously refreshed while Taliyah remains in combat. So, in short, as long as you go near terrain or structures, you will be mounted on your rock, and of course have bonus movement speed. This can help you return to lane quicker, get to those objectives, or even increase your roams and ganks. Just like your ultimate, it adds absolutely nothing in fights, so you have to use this increased mobility to make sure you're roaming around and finding picks whenever possible. Your Q ability is Threaded Volley, and this is what gives you your really nice poke, and of course wave clear. When activated, Taliyah unleashes 5 stone shards in quick succession in the target direction over 1.5 seconds, dealing magic damage in a small area X units radius wide around the first target hit. Targets hit by a stone shard take 40% damage from subsequent shards. Casting Threaded Volley also creates an area of worked ground 450 units radius wide around Taliyah that lasts between 120 and 66 based on cooldown reduction seconds. While on work ground, Taliyah gains between 10 and 20 based on level bonus movement speed and only shoots 1 rock. The mana cost, however, is halved. So the first thing to note is when you are going in for all-ins, of course you want all 5 stone shards, so make sure you're not on work ground when you do cast it so you get all those shards. Being on work ground in the lane phase, however, will make dodging skill shots a lot easier with that bonus movement speed, and it's still great to cast because it will shoot 1 stone still, and be great for poking and last hitting with the low mana cost. Try to keep track and manage where the work ground is though, because you want to have the bonus shots whenever you can. Your W ability is Seismic Shove, and this is great for pulling off your combos and peeling if required. When activated, Taliyah marks the target location and selects a direction. After 1 second, the ground erupts, dealing magic damage to all enemies hit, knocking them in the chosen direction for 1 second. So you can first either use this ability to knock people into your E ability to combo a bunch of damage, or of course peel people off of you depending on the direction that you do select. It does take a second to erupt, so you have to be very mindful of that, because if you do miss the ability, you're going to do either no damage or not be able to pull somebody off of you. Your E ability is Unraveled Earth, and this does some pretty significant damage and also slows the enemy. When activated, Taliyah scatters 18 boulders in a cone, dealing magic damage to enemies hit. The boulders remain for 4 seconds, slowing all enemies within the area for 20% plus 4% per 100 AP. After 4 seconds, all remaining boulders explode, dealing the initial magic damage again. Enemies who dash over or are knocked through Unraveled Earth's boulders cause them to detonate instantly, each dealing them 50% of Unraveled Earth's initial damage. This ability is fantastic for zoning people and also combos with your W insanely well. You can drop these on the ground, then use your W ability to knock them through a bunch of boulders and do a ton of damage. This is your primary combo, and as long as you can pull it off, you're going to destroy the enemies. Your ultimate is Weaver's Wall, and this is your non-combat ultimate that gives you some really solid gank and roam potential. When activated, Taliyah channels for 1 second before summoning a massive wall of spiraling rock that tears through the battlefield in the target direction, creating impassable terrain for a few seconds and knocking aside allied and enemy champions as it emerges. Taliyah can reactivate Weaver's Wall while channeling to ride atop the wall at 1500 speed as it emerges. Taking damage or inputting a move command in any direction will force her off the wall, which will continue along its path normally. If you'd like to bring down the wall, simply reactivate it and the wall will come down. So since this ability has a really long range, and of course you can't move past it unless you flash or dash over it, it's going to be really solid in roams and ganks. Simply use it to cut off an escape path and then reactivate it to ride the wall and get to the area, and then do your damage. It's also going to be fantastic in team fights. If you can pick off a couple targets, you can delete them, and then you will have an advantage in the team fight. For your skill order, you first want to put a point into your ultimate whenever you can at 6, 11, and 16. Then for its really solid poke damage and wave clear, we want to max our Q ability first. Then we'll move on to maxing our E ability second. It does some really solid damage and is a great way to zone people out of certain spots in a team fight. That of course means we save our W ability for last. We just want to make sure we take 1 early point in it at level 3 so we can actually knock people into our E ability, or of course peel for ourselves if we knock them the other way. For your main combo, you first use your W ability, and before the knockback you drop your E ability, so when they are knocked back, they will be knocked through it and take a bunch of damage. At this point, you want to activate your Q ability to do more damage, and try not to be in worked ground so you get multiple shots. In this scenario, I first poke the enemy champion a little bit with my Q ability. When you feel like you can go for it, use your W and your E combo. In this example, I was very confident I would be able to knock her into my E ability, so I dropped it first and used my W ability to pull her into it. You can use either your W or your E ability first in your W-E combo, both are viable. Last tier, since I knew Ivern was definitely going to get hit by the Ash Arrow, I go up to him, use my W ability to pull him towards me, drop my E ability on the ground, and then finish him off with a Q. During the lane phase, you'll want to use your Threaded Volley as your main way to poke the enemy champion, and also wave clear. Make sure you properly manage where your work ground is so you can use multiple shots if you do need to. The single shot, however, is still really solid because it's a great way to last hit and poke since the mana is going to be reduced. You'll then want to try to land your Unraveled Earth and Seismic Shove combo on the enemy to deal a ton of damage. If you can land it, you have the option of following up with your Threaded Volley for a great trade or a kill. Finally, when you are level 6, you'll want to make sure you're looking for roams and get off a Weaver's Wall whenever you're able to. It's a great way to get yourself or another lane snowballing. Taliyah is a strong control mage and therefore a pretty damn solid team fighter. You also have multiple ways to teamfight effectively, and both teams should dictate how you're going to be fighting. If you have a fairly fed hyper carry, then usually I'll focus on using my abilities to peel for them so they can delete the enemy team. Now if you instead have enough peel, you can use your kit to knock an enemy carry out of position for your team, and you of course to delete. Usually I like to hold onto my Weaver's wall to either chase some enemies after the fight or initiate a fight and split the enemy team up so you have a much easier team fight. Now let's look at a couple hard matchups, and first up is Fizz. He's a very high damage and slippery champion that has the potential to quite easily, as long as you can land his ultimate, all in the absolute shit out of you. You are also relatively immobile, so landing this ultimate's not going to be the hardest thing in the world for him. Against him, you're going to have to play a lot more defensively, make sure you dodge the shark at all costs, and try to roam with your ultimate so he's not even there whenever you're going for fights. Next up is another mobile assassin, Katarina. Against her, yet again, you're going to have to be a lot more defensive and save your W ability for whenever she ultimates. Canceling it quickly is pretty important for her all-ins. She is, however, relatively weak early on, so try to abuse her as much as possible. Once she does get a bit stronger, try to avoid her as much as you can and roam around with your ultimate. Next up is Annie, and if she flashes and ultimates on you, there's basically zero counterplay. Against her, I would consider getting a Banshee's Veil relatively early on to stop her all-ins as much as possible. She's even more immobile than you, so if she doesn't have her flash up, be aggressive and trade with her as much as you can. When Tibbers and her flash is available, be very, very defensive and try not to even be in lane and roam around. She can't get to lanes very quickly. Last up I got Xerath, who is a very, very long-range mage who's going to poke you down and be very frustrating. Try to use the bonus movement speed from your workaround to dodge his skill shots as much as possible, but against a really good Xerath or a scripting one, they're usually going to land anyways. Xerath, however, is a very immobile mage, so try to roam around as much as you can with your ultimate and your passive to get kills that way. Alright, now let's finish this off with the item build, which starts with a Doran's Ring, health potions, and a warding totem. For your core build, we have the Morellonomicon and a Rylai's Crystal Scepter. The Morellonomicon's fantastic because it gives you 20% early cooldown reduction, a bunch of mana regeneration, and of course, a bunch of ability power. Now, Taliyah's already pretty decent at kiting, but when you add a Rylai's Crystal Scepter and it's slow, it's going to get even easier, and it's fantastic on Taliyah. As long as you can land your abilities, even though you are rather immobile, it's going to be really hard to get on top of you. Now, as an alternative, you could get the Hextech GLP. The main reason this is a fantastic alternative is the activation, which does do a nice chunk of damage and also applies a slow, making your combos really easy to pull off. Now for your boot options though, we have the Sork Shoes for magic penetration, Ionian Boots for 10% CDR, and Ninja Tabbies if you're against a very hard AD champion. By default, I'll go for the Sork Shoes, but the other two are fantastic alternatives. For the item pool, we first have the Rabadon's Death Cap. If you're wanting to be a really strong late game carry, then you're probably going to have to pick one up so you can have as much ability power as possible. Another really solid item would be the Void Staff. This will give you a really nice chunk of magic penetration, and when people finally have their magic resist in the late stages of the game, this will allow you to still do your damage. If you're against a very tanky lineup with a lot of health, you could go for Liandry's. This is a great way to pick up some more penetration, and that burn based on the percentage of the enemy's health is also fantastic for dealing with those high health targets. Then finally, if you're looking for a really solid defensive, you could go for either the Zhonya's or the Banshee's Veil. In most cases, I will go for the Zhonya's for its really solid stasis activation, but the Banshee's Veil is really solid against some champions. In most cases, I will build at least one of them. For my example full build, I first take the core build with the Sork Shoes, and then add the Void Staff, Rabadon's Death Cap, and Zhonya's. You'll have 30% CDR, an absolute ton of damage with the magic penetration to make sure you do it to high magic resist targets, and of course the slows from the Rylai's Crystal Scepter. It's a really solid build that does a ton of damage, you'll be very hard to get on top of because of the Rylai's slow, and even if you do, you have the Zhonya's as another defensive. And that is everything I've got for mid lane Taliyah. Don't forget to check out the video description below for a link to all of my social medias. I do also have a Discord server, so if you do need any additional help or you just want to hang out, then please feel free to join. We have a lot of people in there, and a lot of them love to help anybody who needs it. I also have a second Let's Play channel, so if you enjoy Let's Plays, please also check out my second channel. But other than that, thank you guys so much for checking out the video. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take it easy, and peace.